Hi, I'm Karena Walter, and welcome to the Standard Newsroom. I'm here with St. Catharines Mayor Walter Sendzik for our first 2020 chat with the mayor. Welcome.
First chat of the next decade.
It is.
That sounds just like there's something substantive there.
There is. It better be a good one.
It better be good. Yeah, this sets the stage for the next decade. Okay.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure at all. You walked over here. Is the city ready for the big snowstorm tomorrow?
We're always ready. I think we've been lulled into a false sense of security when it's come to this winter. We've had more warm days than not, but our crew is one of the best there is. So we will be ready, and I just remind people that when it does snow, take your time. There's no rush to go anywhere. Take your time and let the crews clean off the streets as quickly as possible. But we have a strong snow removal crew. I'm quite proud of them.
What about the snow parking? Are we going to see a
It all depends on the volume, right?
declaration?
It all depends on the volume, and the reason why we have the snow parking is because we want to be able to clear the roads to the curb as quickly as possible. And for a lot of folks who may not be in parts of the community where there's a lot of parking on the streets, what you have is that when the plow goes down a street where there's a lot of parking on the street, the plow only has a certain amount of space to push the snow around. And so what invariably happens is it gets pushed up to the cars. People then dig their cars out, and then you get these big mounds that are put into the streets so it becomes a very hard to navigate street, if you will. And so what we're through this snow parking is get as many cars off the streets as possible. So if you have to do 2 cars in your driveway, put 2 cars in your driveway. If you have to walk to a small parking lot where you can put it into a parking lot for a couple hours, do that to allow the plows to get through the streets. That's all. It's just trying to make it a better and safer for both the snowplow driver and also for the residents in our community.
Are we ever going to see a point where the city starts ticketing people for not moving their cars during snowstorms?
Yep, I think we will, and it's in an educational phase. We're still, I think this is our 3rd year entering into winter season, and Guelph has started to ticket now, and other communities that we have modeled this program are now embarking on the ticketing process. So what we want to do is just give the residents enough notice, and then recognize that if we have to clear the streets, we will ticket the cars, and it'll be an unfortunate experience, but we're just asking for people, when it snows heavily, get the cars off the streets as much as possible.
Okay. I usually ask you a few questions before we jump into reader questions.
Oh, of course you do.
But
You're going to go right into, so you're switching it around now.
I'm
Okay,
switching it around because we have
It's a
3
new
reader questions about
New
the
year.
same topic. It is a new year, so we gotta mix it up a bit.
Yeah.
3 readers have asked about Rush drummer Neil Peart, who has a connection to St. Catharines. He grew up here. There's been a movement to honor him. You've been kind of part of that movement yourself. So I have a question from Jim on Facebook asking, will you promote the idea of erecting some sort of memorial in or close to Lakeside Park as a memory to Neil Peart? I have an email from Michael asking, how soon can we expect the statue of Neil Peart to be installed in Lakeside Park? And I have a Twitter question from a reader asking, is there a good chance of a memorial plaque for Neil Peart in Lakeside Park? So what is happening with that right now?
And I'll start with, it's unfortunate that we have to be having this discussion now. And it's unfortunate because it was the untimely passing of Neil. And an iconic Canadian, an iconic musician known around the world, Order of Canada recipient, in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, who spent his formative years here in our community. And a lot of his music was influenced and is influenced in terms of, he's a wonderful lyricist. He wrote a lot of the music of the words of Rush. And so when you look at his lyrics even, just you get that sense of his upbringing here in St. Catharines and Port Dalhousie. So we want to be able to acknowledge and commemorate his life, and also connect our community and the community of Rush and music back into St. Catharines in some way. So there is a motion coming up on January 27th to start with the public process of renaming or naming the pavilion, because currently the Lakeside Pavilion is just a pavilion. It would be a fitting tribute because one of his iconic songs, Lakeside Park, was written about Lakeside Park and his experience, and he worked in the midway there, and that the carnival that was there, and he spent his summers in the water there. So having something like that from the city's perspective is a good strong move in terms of the recognition. As to a statue itself, that's more of a community driven process, and so we're open to having those discussions with the community. and we got to be respectful of the family. So we want to make sure that whatever step that we make, that Neil's family is included, and the Rush family. And the Rush family being Alex Lifeson and Getty Lee and their management team and everyone else associated with Rush, because Neil is an iconic individual. He is known for his ability to play the drums. He's world class in that, and Rush is a world class band. And so we have to be respectful of all of that when we consider what we're going to do. So I do appreciate the community's push to do something, and we want to do something that's respectful of the family, but also is something that will remind the community and the community beyond St. Catharines that one of ours went on to achieve something that very few, even in the country, have achieved, and it's something that we should celebrate.
Was the pavilion idea your idea?
It was a community idea. It's long overdue, and I've said this before, it is unfortunate that it took this long to look at how do we acknowledge someone from our community who has gone on to do amazing things. And so the pavilion is something where we wanted to put something in the park, because the park, one of their first breakout songs was Lakeside Park, and so we wanted to make that connection.
Has anybody reached out to his family at all, or to Rush, about some of the ideas?
Yes, that's taking place.
Oh, okay. So when do you think something will happen, as this person was asking?
Again, it's the sensitivity of time. I think we have to be sensitive to both the family, the band Rush, in terms of their approach to this. So I think what we want to do is make sure that there's an open communication all the way along as decisions are being made, and that's why on January 27th the motion is to start the process. Okay. And if it's council's wish and they want to move forward with that on that day, they can choose to do so, but we want to start a public process.
We'll get back to some more reader questions, but I did want to ask you about the GM property that made some news this week. Right. There was a public meeting for residents at Mata Cafe downtown to talk about some of their concerns about we're talking about the Ontario Street property where that Bayshore owns, the former GM property. Right. You said at council that there is a lot of frustration in the community about this, and councillors Porter and Cisco have a motion coming forward about some of the things they think the city can do, and I'm wondering, is there more that the city can do at this point?
Well, there is and there isn't. It's limited, and so there was a citizens meeting at Mate. It wasn't a public meeting, because when it's framed as a public meeting under the Planning Act or a public meeting under what the city would do, there's a whole bunch of prescriptions
around it.
Right,
I'm in a public meeting, as in anybody could go and attend.
Right, and
so it wasn't a city meeting.
It was, it's good to see a group of people who are trying to come together and push that. You also have the Hague Street Neighborhood Association, which has been very active in drawing the city's attention to the issues that we may not see as a community, such as a fence that had fallen, one of the hoarding fences that had fallen down, or the increase in graffiti or broken glass, or someone actually living on site. So the Hague Street Association has done a wonderful job of connecting with the city and making sure the city's aware, because we can go in and when I say we can go in, the city can go to the property and it could provide the safety of people getting onto the property, creating the barriers. But there's very much limited as to what the city can do on the property. Once the city goes onto the property, there's a lot of risk that then is transferred to the city, and that can be very costly to the taxpayer. And so it's understanding the frustrations, but also the limitations of what the city can do. So the city, in my opinion, has done everything it could do to create a safe environment as much as possible on the perimeter of the site. There's more things that can be done. I got to compliment Councillor Porter and Councillor Cisco. Their motion is a very strong action-oriented motion, and it's easy to come to council with a motion and just say we want the city to do something. We're upset because the city hasn't. We don't think the city's done something. We want to do something. What's better is what Councillor Porter and Cisco have said is, let's work with the Ministry of the Environment. Let's put up some kind of air quality systems that can measure the air coming in. Let's look at the water runoff, and let's see if we can ensure that it's not overtly contaminated. And also, how can we work with the Ministry of the Environment to look at the inside of the property, because we don't have legal jurisdiction. They have more legal rights than we do. So I think that motion is a much better motion. And I gotta compliment the councillors. They've been on this since day one, and so they're as frustrated as anybody else, and they're the ones working as hard or harder than anybody else, trying to address the concerns of the citizens. So actions taking place, and we're hoping for some news, hopefully soon, regarding the property itself.
As in a sale, you mean?
That's what we're hoping for.
Essentially, yeah. Okay. In the meantime, the residents obviously want to know about the environmental impacts coming out of that site.
Right.
It just seems
And
to be
it's always been a contaminated site. That's the other thing is I've lived in that community, and actually York and Carleton was where my grandmother had a beauty salon. So I spent most of my formative years on weekends at my grandmother and grandfather's house, and it's literally about 200 meters down from GM. It's always been a industrial site, so contamination has always been an issue on that site, and so it should be of no surprise to any of the residents that is a site that we're going to have to really focus on in terms of brownfield remediation. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody.
Do you think that's what's holding up a sale?
I don't think so. I think there's other variables that are holding up a sale. I think anybody looking at the property today knows that it has 100 years of industrial footprint on it, but it is in the heart of the city. I would say it's probably one of our most valuable sites.
Yeah, it's huge. It's
Yeah.
a huge site. You mentioned graffiti on the site, and I wanted to ask you about graffiti elsewhere in the city. It seems to be everywhere right now. We're also seeing it in other cities.
Yeah.
The city put out a tweet yesterday, I think, asking people to phone in if they see stuff, and I'm just wondering what can the city do?
Well, it's one of those things where it is such a visible distraction committed by very few people, yet the impact and damage is seen by a lot of folks. It's probably one of the biggest irritants that I have is seeing this urban blight. It's in Niagara-on-Lake, it's in Niagara Falls, it's in Thorold, it's in St. Catharines, it's in Welland, and it's this complete disregard for public property and private property that a few individuals are wreaking havoc on the visual cleanliness of St. Catharines. And it would be hopeful, working with Niagara Regional Police and the public, report it to the Niagara Regional Police. If you see graffiti, report it. They need to document it. And also report it to the city so we can work towards working with the private sector or our own property to clean it up. The quicker you clean up graffiti, it's more of a discouragement to whoever is out there who's doing this disrespectful stuff. It is frustrating. I echo the frustrations.
Yeah, it seems to be everywhere right now. I wanted to ask you about a CIP meeting that the council held this week on Wednesday.
What does CIP stand for?
Community Improvement Plan.
There you go.
So these are the incentives that developers get to clean up a brownfield development. We've seen some controversy about that earlier in the year. It seems like there's kind of a gulf between what developers expect from the city or would like to see from the city and what some residents feel about incentives for developments.
I would say it's not necessarily a gulf between the two. It's more of the developers want consistency. And what happened previously with council is that we were awarding CIP based on a criteria, and then when one came along that met the criteria, council decided that we didn't want to support it, which was unfortunate in terms of how do you set a criteria and approve 98% of them following the criteria, and then that one that comes in front of it, they deny it, even though it scored high in the markings. So what this new revision is looking at affordable housing and adding affordable housing in, which hasn't been in previously, preservation of heritage, which is already in there, and also brownfield remediation, and making sure that the criteria is strong enough that there's a certainty with the developer that if I hit a threshold, council's not just going to vote it down because they don't like who the person is, they don't like the company, and that's the certainty that developers are looking for. And I think what residents are looking for is just making sure that the dollars that are being allocated, because I want to be quite clear with CIP and a lot of the tax, the TIF programs, tax increment funding, is it's the increased in assessed value that drives the program. So it's not free money. The developer has to invest tens of millions of dollars in order for that project to come to life. And then the new assessed value of the property is in which the tax is being reassessed. It's in that space that over a period of time there will be a granting program. So this whole idea that you're just giving money to developers, you're not giving anything. You're just foregoing the full rate of taxation for a period of time in the future. And the net benefit is you get a brand new product in a space, and then after that taxation period, that new taxation rate has been established, you get that into the city gets that into perpetuity. So it's a net win for both the developer and the community. It just probably hasn't been explained properly to the public that this is a wise investment that communities across North America are doing. And anyone who says that CIPs don't work hasn't done their research, because the research shows CIPs increase the assessed value of properties, which benefits the other property owners, not just in the surrounding area, but across the city, because it's a pooling of our taxes. So if we have more assessed value, our overall tax impact rate will go down because we have more assessed property to absorb the taxes. So it's a net win all across, but it is something difficult to understand at times. That's all.
Mm-hmm. So the city is revamping this program right now. When are we going to see a new program?
February. By the end of February, we should have another public meeting at City Council, which will be going through the criteria, and we're hoping to have this established by April. And that's pretty quick, because we've heard from the development community. They want to build in the community, but they want to know what kind of CIP programs we'll put in front of them, and they want to know that there's going to be a consistency when it comes to the criteria.
So when you were mentioning affordable housing, would that be like you would get an extra incentive if you had an affordable housing component in your
Correct.
property?
Yeah,
okay.
And you're seeing a lot of other communities do that. Like it's long overdue.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that one.
Yeah.
Let's go back to readers' questions. Dave is asking, will the downtown, this was from Twitter, will the downtown facelift extend on Geneva Street from St. Paul to Welland? Much needed.
So that is an area, speaking of CIPs, that's under CIP as well. So I think what Dave's talking about is it's where the District 1 police headquarters is also going in that area. It's where the BME church is currently. Storm, which is the hair salon there, beautifully redone. What we're looking for is, and I think what he's looking for is, how can we improve the pedestrian experience as well, and work with the businesses to lift up their appearances. And I think Storm is a great example of what's taking place there, and we're hoping other businesses will come to the table and we can partner with them on that. But that is an area of interest for us.
Okay. We'll do some rapid fire questions here. From Facebook, Chrissy is asking, I was wondering if you could speak to the future of Lincoln Park Pool in Western Hill. A few of us have spearheaded a campaign to keep it open, but every year its future seems to hang in the balance. Will the city commit to keeping this summer hotspot alive and well for years to come? This came up at budget meetings too.
Yep, and it's a great question. It is under the so the Recreation Master Plan has an aquatics subcommittee, and so they are reviewing their overall aquatics master plan for the city, and there's no plans currently to close Lincoln Park Pool. And it's a well-used pool. And what I would say is to a neighborhood like that is to continue to demonstrate the need in the community. I think what we've seen, and this is what's happening with outdoor pools in a lot of municipalities, is that the usage rate is actually going down. And save and except Meriton, the Meriton Lions Pool is showing great usage, which is fantastic. And what we want to do is work with neighborhood associations or neighborhood groups like this, show the need as well. So make sure that the pool's being used, and at the same time work with the aquatics committee, the Recreation Master Plan, is to show the use and the want and the need in that area of the community. So it is a very well used pool, I know that.
Adam is asking, when will the roads around the south end of Bunting finally get curbs? We have a high water table, floods in backyards, basement issues galore, and my sidewalk is even lower than the road. This has already cost me $20,000, and I'm afraid someone will slip and fall when my sidewalk pond freezes over.
Okay, so that's it, and it is for folks who are looking at it, it's the point beyond what would be Queenston Street. So there is a stretch of Bunting Road that goes beyond Queenston Street into the Meriton area. And so first I would say is contact your ward councillors, so Councillor Littleton and Councillor Miller. And when you have specific issues such as the ponding of water on your sidewalks, those should be immediate complaints that you would be drawing to the attention. So you could use Citizens First, so Citizens First at stcatharines.ca, and pictures are always helpful. Send it into the city, and maybe there is a remedial issue that can be managed quickly. As to the insertion of curbs, that would be done with a complete road reconstruction. And I don't have the answer as to whether or not that's going to be under any kind of reconstruction anytime soon. But what I could say is that that is a growing part of our community. And so as we build more pedestrian-friendly exchanges and pathways through St. Catharines, that is an area that we should be looking at because of how fast it's growing. So great question. Reach out to your local councillors and also use Citizens First for those kind of immediate issues that you're facing right now.
They pretty much deal with anything, any problems that you have,
Yes.
you call them and they will direct you to the right department.
They actually get the information
Okay.
from the right department. So it's a one point of contact. So you say that you have flooding on your sidewalks, take some photos, send it in. They'll send it into transportation and engineering. They will communicate back as to what the action plan would be.
Okay. I think we're out of time.
Wow, that's fast.
Yeah, so we've still got a couple more, but we'll have to wait until next month, I guess.
All right, well, I'm looking forward to it, and Happy New Year.
Thank you, you as well. And thanks for joining us. If you have any questions for Mayor Sendzik for our next chat with the mayor, you can tweet them using the hashtag AskSendzik, or you can email them to me, which is karena.walter@niagaradailies.com. Thanks for joining us.